Sorry, I had to think for a second because I was like, wait,
how many semesters do I have?
Before I get into the video, let me first introduce myself in case this is the first video you're watching of mine. I'm Eve. I grew up in Texas and I'm currently studying abroad at Peking University, and I finished my first semester as a sophomore. If you want to know more about how I even got here in the first place, feel free to check out some of my previous videos. In this video, I wanted to talk about a couple of main things.
How this semester has compared with the past 2 semesters, any interesting things that happened this semester, would I still choose China again if I could do it over, what I look forward to in the coming semesters, and I will touch on a little bit about like what my situation is in terms of what I plan to do after graduation, whether study abroad is for you or not.
And so the main point of this is just to kind of like document my own thoughts and kind of like I think it'll be interesting to see the progressive different mindset shifts that I have. So if you guys have watched any of my previous videos, you might know that I was kind of struggling, you could say, at first trying to become adapted to life in China, because you know I have never lived anywhere else than my home in Texas, and so given that I was flying halfway across the world to an entirely different country, it was definitely quite the experience. Sorry, my camera just ran out of storage, so I had to delete certain things. Oh, another thing is,
I know that in my previous videos, okay, this is like kind of completely sidetracked, but I just want to talk about it really quickly. In my previous videos, I mentioned that I want a camera, and I'm actually finally using my camera, yay! Because I've previously filmed all of my videos with my phone, and so I think this is great. I don't know if you guys can tell, but the video quality I think is slightly better, and I think it blurs out slightly in the background. But anyways, I'm pretty happy with it. It's definitely not the most high-grade camera out there, but it's, I would say, slightly better than my phone. I don't know if I'm actually able to use it.
How this last semester compared with my previous 2 semesters, I would say that overall, as I mentioned, like it was a struggle to get accustomed to life in China when I first got there, because I had grown up in the same place my entire life and I just wasn't used to being so far away from home. And then there was also the fact that there was a language barrier. My Mandarin was like pretty decent, but like definitely not at the level to take college level classes, and I had passed HSK6, which is like the entrance, or not the entrance exam, like the Chinese level taking exam that kind of assesses how good your Chinese is, and you have to like get a certain score on the HSK6 exam in order to be considered for admission into Peking University as an undergraduate student. And so I had passed that, but my reading and writing skills especially were nowhere near the level that they needed to be, as well as my listening skills. And so at first, when I had first gotten to Peking University, I would say, you know, understanding things in class was definitely a challenge, and now it's gotten slightly better, I must say. Like this past semester, I was actually able to, so for some of my classes, I'm actually able to answer in English, although the test is in Chinese, because for instance, economics and finance, a lot of the course material was initially actually written in English and then translated into a Chinese version. We're just using like a translated version, or just in general, like I feel like because economics and finance can sometimes be seen as a more US-centric subject, that's why a lot of professors are typically okay with writing in English. And like if you're a part of, for instance, the Guanghua School of Management at Peking University, a lot of the courses are actually taught completely in English for undergraduates, because I think just with the finance heavy situation, like there's a lot of English content out there, and still kind of like English dominated, you could say, because it's the primary language that's used in business transactions. But I get ahead of myself. In any case, there was an exam that I was taking about like political economics this semester that was, you know, about like the politics in China and such, and so it's probably better to answer in Chinese in that situation. And so I completed a short answer question and kind of long essay question format exam, all in Chinese, and I was extremely proud of myself, to be completely honest, because if you had told me that I would do that like a semester ago or even 2 semesters ago, I would have been like, I'm not so sure about that. But especially because a lot of my major courses are actually very math heavy, so there's not as much writing as you would think. So given that this was like literally just all essay kind of based writing, and I completed it and got a pretty decent grade, I'm pretty proud of myself in that sense. And so overall, I think I've gotten slightly more accustomed to taking all classes in Mandarin, and obviously sometimes I won't understand entirely what the lecturer is talking about, or I have to kind of rewatch the lecture recording afterwards. But in general, in terms of an academic viewpoint, I'm definitely getting more accustomed to learning in Chinese, and I feel like I'm more comfortable, you know, reading Chinese, listening to Chinese, writing Chinese. I would obviously like to still improve my level of academic writing in Mandarin, because I feel like I still have a lot of room for improvement in that aspect, but I think there's a long way ahead still, and so I just think it's nice to see that progress. Overall, it's been, you know, better in terms of academics and, you know, in terms of social as well. I've gotten the opportunity to meet a lot of new people and just kind of immerse myself in different activities, but I'll talk about that more as I talk about things that have happened this past semester. I think maybe the one thing I will say is just wishing that I could meet more local students, because I feel like, as you know, even for all of these 3 semesters combined, I feel like my interactions with local students is probably still less than with international students. I think part of that probably has to do with, you know, just the fact that we don't live on their campus, but then also perhaps the fact that there may be like some sort of culture gap or like barrier to some degree in terms of our interactions that kind of just limit the amount of time that I get to spend with local students. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's just kind of the opportunities you make for yourself and going out and putting yourself out there. So I'm just hoping to maybe do more of that in the future. As for interesting things that happened this past semester, I think let's start with the bad, because then that makes the good even more good, if that makes sense. But I would say the bad was definitely the math. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I took like an advanced mathematics course for both semesters my freshman year, and that is like kind of like, you know, like in pre-med they have like weed out classes, which are like for what we're getting chemistry and stuff, and so at Peking University, math is like the weed out class for certain majors. Like if you can't pass the level of math this particular major requires, then you have to switch majors, essentially, is kind of the process. And so the math that I was taking is basically Calc 3, Calc 4, Calc 5, a little bit of Calc 5 to that extent, and then that was advanced mathematics that I passed my freshman year, which was the first 2 semesters at Peking University. But this semester I had to take linear algebra, which for me personally was arguably more difficult, I think, because I had taken AP/BC calculus in high school. It was a lot easier for me to grow accustomed to, you know, that level of math rigor in calculus, but for linear algebra, it was a lot more abstract, I would say, for me. I didn't have as strong of a foundation, so that was definitely one of the most difficult classes, and I just felt like I was constantly grinding and doing so many math problems until like my brain felt like it was going to explode. Like literally my regime was like, for the days that I didn't have classes in the morning, I would just wake up at like 8 and then, you know, typically get a little bit of exercise in, and then from like 9 to noon, assuming that I didn't have other classes, I would literally just be doing math problems, learning math problems, doing math problems, rewatching the lecture recording. I'm glad that I survived it, happy to say that I survived, but that was definitely one of the lower points of my overall academic experience this past semester. Yeah, and I mean, honestly, in hindsight, in terms of like not so fun bad things, I think that math course was probably the only really thing that I can like that stuck in my brain, really. Everything else was honestly pretty good when I look back on it. Like I only was able to get in like a vlog for the first week of school, because then afterwards things got pretty busy. But overall, math was the main thing, and then I think maybe also just sometimes still feeling a little bit secluded almost, like as I mentioned, like from the local students, and then also, you know, being away from home. Obviously I don't really get homesick as much, but I think just being like far away was kind of hard sometimes, and also just constantly feeling like maybe I'm not socializing enough or whatever. So I tried to like put myself out there and interact with as many people as I can, but sometimes it still can feel like, you know, you're just not doing enough, you're not socializing enough, you're not participating in enough activities, even though you're already doing everything that you can. I don't know if any of you guys have had similar experiences, but that's maybe one of the other lower sides of my experience. But in terms of good things, fun updates, I was a teaching assistant for the Principle of Microeconomics, which was a course that I took my first year as a freshman. As a TA, I think I got to learn a lot and like meet different students, and then some of them were actually older than me, so that was a bit scary, to be honest, at first, because I was like,
oh, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to, you know, teach people that are older than me.
Because I think some of them just weren't like, they weren't taking the course for their major requirement, but it was for like just for fun or for like an elective. So overall, I think it was definitely a great experience to help me improve my overall Chinese oral skills on a technical level. And I think that also just getting to TA in my second year was also something that I feel like was a great experience because, you know, not a lot of people get to do that, have the opportunity to do that, especially in China, because most TAs are graduate students. And then I also joined the basketball team for my department, and that was really fun because I got to meet a lot of new people that were also a part of my department, and some were like significantly older, like some of them were masters even, but that was just really cool to get to interact with, you know, and actually pretty much all of them were local students. And I don't really have a very strong basketball background or anything, but I think that I got to, you know, because I am relatively tall, so I was able to kind of get back into the sport because I had done it very briefly when I was in 7th grade for like one season, and I honestly wasn't very good because I didn't have much technical skill, but I think the fact that I am tall does help to some degree. And then for me also, given that I have like an athletic background because I played ice hockey when I was younger and did competitive swimming, so that kind of helped in terms of the athletic aspect of it. I also had a tennis class because at PKU we have a PE requirement, and so I decided to choose tennis this semester, and I had done swimming the first semester. And so I have never played tennis before, but the teacher was very patient with us, and she just kind of taught us step by step how to, you know, swing the racket and the positioning and everything like that. I want to say that I know how to play tennis now. It's still a bit like shaky, but overall I think that I've gotten a lot better, and I'm very happy with the fact that I decided to choose tennis because it's actually a very fun sport, and I do hope to continue it later on. And then also just getting to travel a little bit more. Like I posted a Loyang vlog a couple days back from when I'm filming this video, and so that was just a really fun experience. I'm just like, one of the main things that I want to do more of while I'm in China is to travel, because I think that it's, you know, it's such a beautiful country. There are so many different places, and I would really like to take advantage of that opportunity. Would I still choose China if I did it over again? I think that, you know, overall I definitely would, because the experiences and the, you know, learning curves that I've had to overcome while studying abroad in China is something that I don't think I could have gotten if I had decided to take, you know, the more conventional path and gone to university in the US. And also just having the opportunity to improve my Chinese skills and speaking, writing, listening, what have you. I think that's just something that has allowed me to also get closer to my culture and just, you know, retain a part of myself and my identity, which I don't think would have been possible if I had not decided to go to China. And just being surrounded by so many highly intelligent, hardworking people, I think, you know, just really motivates you to also work harder. And that's something that I really appreciate about the experience at Peking University. And, you know, has it been easy? Definitely not. But has it been worth it? I would say, you know, overall, I think that it has been for the most part. And I think that, you know, studying abroad in China is not something that you can do every day, and it's like a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I do sometimes wonder what it would have been like if I had decided to stay in the US and done college there. But I think that, you know, there's always opportunity to come back for masters, or depending on whatever happens later on. And so that kind of draws into the next thing that I want to talk about, the next semester, the coming semesters, and what I plan to do. So I'm actually not really sure yet what I want to do after graduation, whether I want to do a master's program or go on to just find a job directly. I think with the current job market, it may be kind of difficult to find a job like fresh out of college, at least from what I've heard, but I think I'll just kind of play it by ear and see what opportunities open up. I'm always just trying to learn more and challenge myself, because I think that will help me just grow as a person, as an individual, and as a student. That will help me, you know, find opportunity, because opportunity is there for people who are ready for those opportunities to embrace them. And also looking for opportunities, I think, is very important, because, you know, sometimes you can't just expect those chances to come to you. You need to go look for them yourself, and that's kind of just the overall mindset that I've been looking at the situation with. And so finally, I just want to really quickly answer, should you study abroad? I think that if you're looking to broaden your perspective, like from a global standpoint, and meet different people from all walks of life, and also just like live in a different country, experience life in like a more international setting, then I think studying abroad is definitely for you. It's a really fun experience overall, but it is going to be challenging at some times if you're not used to having to accommodate to a completely different life, different lifestyle, different people, different language. But I think that, you know, at the end of the day, I think that it's worth studying abroad at least some point in your life, or at least going abroad to just kind of see what other places are like, what other cultures are like, I think is definitely worthwhile at the end of the day. But if you're someone who's like, no, I want something a lot more stable, I'm comfortable where I am, I don't want to have to like move around and grow accustomed to and adapt to different ways of life, then maybe study abroad is not for you, because there's going to be a lot of that in the process and the journey. And so I think that, you know, everyone has a different way of living, has a different path, has a different trajectory for where they want their lives to go. And I just hope that wherever you decide to go, that you enjoy and embrace and enjoy the moment, I think is the most important part. And that's what I'm definitely trying to do. So yep, that was a recap of my third semester at Peking University, and I look forward to the next semesters that are to come. If you enjoyed this video and would like to follow my journey, I'm also planning on doing language learning videos as well. If you're wanting to learn Chinese, please also consider subscribing for that, and I'll see you guys in the next one.